Welcome back to Pet Sitter Confessional. Today, we're brought to you by Time to Pet and Pet Perennials. What's your exit plan in your business? I know, it sounds like a long shot, and many of us feel like we're going to be working for the rest of our lives. However, you don't have to do that, and there are ways to exit your business, and not just exit, but exit it well, because one day, you're going to want to do something else. Or one day you may need to do something else. But there is value in your business, and there are ways to go about that in a smart and cohesive way. Today, we are super excited to have Josh Winterswyk back on the show. As a certified financial planner with RPA Wealth Management, he walks us through our options for exiting our business, how to create a team around us, and the questions that we need to ask. And then we tackle some common misconceptions about what it means to leave our business. Before we dive in, there is a little disclosure here. Advisory services are offered through RPA Wealth Management, which is a registered investment advisor. This content is provided for informational purposes only. It should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy or sell anything, really. A professional financial advisor should be consulted before implementing any investment strategy. Now, let's get started.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for welcoming me back, Colin. I'm excited to be back. My name is Joshua Winterswyk, and I am a certified financial planner, like Colin said, with RPA Wealth Management here in California. We help with individuals and families basically achieve their financial goals through comprehensive financial planning, investment management, and retirement planning. And I'm really excited to talk about exit planning with you because I think it's a topic that we don't discuss enough. And it's a really, can be a really big source of family's wealth when you own a small business or any type of business. So excited to jump in today.
Yeah, and I guess to kick things off here, when I say the word exit planning, I know things come to certain my mind. But for you, when you hear exit planning or you talk about exit planning, what does that really mean, especially in the context of running and operating a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So exit planning, when I hear that, is basically a strategy to transition out of your business, whether that means selling it. It could mean passing it to a family member or a partner, or some other approach, right? Transitioning it to employees. So really, the strategy to exit the business, just like you kind of would if we're relating it to retirement planning, like you would retire from your company, right? You're exiting the company. This is just your own company.
Yeah, and I think that we tend to not focus on this a lot of times. I know just running a business because we're so focused on running the business, the day-to-day operations, the little things that come up, the multifacets of growing and being concerned about revenue or hiring and adapting to markets. And suddenly we look up and, we've been in the business for 10, 20, maybe 30 years, and trying to figure out how to land that plane might be a little difficult. But so is this something, I guess, when people talk about exit planning, is this something that people should be concerned about only whenever they're getting ready to, retire or look at that? Or is this something that can really be done and started a lot earlier?
That's a great question. And I think that question, we can relate it to our last podcast, which was kind of planning for the future and retirement planning, which is you should have started yesterday, right? If I'm just being fully transparent. And why I say that is because it's really hard to not only guide your financial future, financial freedom, but also guide your business without knowing what the ultimate goal is, right? I think it all starts with setting a goal for the business, whether that's to maximize value or it is to just build it and, have a kind of a lifestyle business to where it's going to, provide me with a very nice lifestyle, but eventually I do want to exit. How am I going to do that? So without actually looking towards the future, setting those goals, it's really hard to, answer some of the day-to-day questions regarding your business. So I think that to answer, your question of when you should start, again, today, because that's just going to give you a higher probability of success, for your future and for your business.
Never a bad idea to start earlier than later, but it can be hard. I know for me, just going I don't know what 30 years looks down the line, and how do I start making plans for something that's so far down the road, and I don't even know if I'm going to make it that long.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and the goal could always change, right? I think going through life, you're that goal is probably going to change, or the measurement of that goal is going to change. But I think with having the discussion and just creating some awareness around where I want to take my venture, or I want to take my business, is just, again, going to help frame the day-to-day, and then also help you achieve financial success going forward.
When we talk about exit planning, when I think of options for exiting my business, are those just things I can do to not work in it anymore?
Yeah, and these options can vary. I mean, there's a few different options that you can take when exiting a business. Like I had mentioned, you can transition the business and just sell it to a third party. A lot of people are familiar with this. I created a small business, and eventually one of my competitor buys me, right? And they can come in and offer you a valuation and a dollar amount, and you agree and you sell that business to someone that's never been in part of your business. What we've seen whenever that happens is that's very difficult to do. One, because basically your business is probably like your baby. You've been nurturing and growing this business for a very long time. So it is pretty difficult to say and agree to a dollar amount to sell it to a third party, and then not necessarily know what's going to happen to that business after you leave. Another option, though, is to transition it to a key employee or a partner or a family member. And this takes very strategic planning as well. And this does take several years to making sure that the business transitions. And I think that also to mention, when we look at all of these options to transitioning out of your business, again, going back to the previous question of when you should start, the earlier we start, the more options and more strategies we have to make this transition more not only tax efficient, but just, again, successful. And then lastly, we can liquidate the business, completely just say, hey, you know what, we're going to close up shop and we're going to sell our assets and we're no longer going to be in business. We shut the doors. We don't like that option though, right? We want to get some sort of value. We want to generate some value for you've worked very hard at building your business. So let's get something for it.
Well, and I guess, too, there could be some aspect of if you have a family, you could be thinking of a legacy aspect to your business as well, of having something to pass down to a family member, or have something that can generate income and financial ease for your future generations from your business as well. So there's not just going, okay, I think it's a lot of people when they think exit planning, I know this is going, oh, I just don't want to work in my business anymore, so I'm done. But going, okay, but what can I guess it's a lot of asking, going, what can it do for me even if I'm not there anymore? Or what can it do for other people if I'm not there anymore?
Right. And not, probably maybe have some employees or, like you said, family members that this could benefit in, or they're interested in taking over this business. Again, this is what's great about opening up your own business, is it does have value. So let's get the most out of that value, not only while you're working in it and growing the business, but as you exit as well. And I think that planning, or starting this exit planning conversation earlier, will allow you also to kind of find the right option or right strategy to exit. Because again, we're not having the conversation 2 years before you want to exit. We're having it 10, 15 years before you want to exit. And we can find out if that child or, that nephew really does want this business, or is interested in taking it over. And we can really strategically plan this to making it a very successful transition.
Yeah, because there's the financial aspect, which is what I focus on a lot. Just me personally going, okay, can we get money from it, or how much is it going to cost, or buying it. But then there's you have to actually set it up for that to make that transition a success. And I did want to ask a little bit about the tax aspects of this, because you mentioned that. What kind of things do we need to have in mind as we look to exit plan, or what kind of tax aspects are attached to each one of these different options?
That's a great question. So when we think of a business, we can think of it like as an investment, right? We talked about mutual funds and taxes in our last podcast as well. And when we buy an investment, or we start an investment, there's an original cost, or what we call cost basis or tax basis. And then there's also the dollar amount that what we sell the business at. So let's just say that we started the business and it only cost us $50,000, and now the business is worth $5 million. Well, there's a taxable gain embedded into that business that we have to be mindful of. So, there are strategic, probably a different podcast to go deeper into like the strategic options you have to not only reduce tax liability through a sell, but I think what we want to probably just touch on in this podcast is there are tax implications that we have to be mindful of. So again, going back to when should we start planning? The earlier we do, the less we can reduce that tax liability.
Yeah, because I may get focused on that. Wow, I could sell my business for $500,000, or I could sell my business for $200,000. But realizing that doesn't come without some little strings attached to it that I have to make sure I have accounted for on my part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what we, a lot of probably listeners can relate to is like owning rental property, right? I bought a rental property, a rental home, or an Airbnb home, and I bought it for $200,000, and I sell it for $400,000. I made $200,000. Well, no, you didn't, right? There's going to be Uncle Sam knocking at the door saying, "Hey, you earned some money here. I need to tax some of it." And that's the same with the business. So that's just kind of my example of, that we do have to be mindful, because the valuation is just the start of what you're going to receive for the business as you exit or you sell it. And then we have to account for taxes and, other implications it has by transitioning. So.
Right. Well, so of those, as far as of selling and transitioning to somebody or liquidating, just with those, I know these are all goal dependent for us as far as how we're going to reach them. What are some considerations of when it might be a good or bad option to move forward with one of those as we're looking at this right now?
I think that understanding the value it has, and then also projecting that value into the future will be a good place to start. So, I think a lot of industries have some general rules of thumb of how to evaluate your company. And when I say that, or what I mean by that is, it's 2 times revenue. So meaning, I had $100,000 in revenue, it's 2 times revenue. So my company is worth $200,000. And then we're going to add a growth rate to that and project that into the future. And this is stuff that we do with our clients. But also, I think this will give you a good idea of what to kind of expect to help you frame what options are best for you. But then I also think there's other variables that go into this decision, which is like, do you even have a key employee that you can transition to, or a family member, right? Then if you don't, that option's not even for you. We're going to have to find a third party to buy this business from us eventually. But it also could mean that if that's something more like meaningful to you, that I'd rather transfer it to someone that I've trained and developed a relationship to, then we're starting to look for like that key employee, right? To promote and to actually eventually take over the business. So it's more of a kind of a recruitment process than it is finding a third party buyer.
Yeah, and that's a different way of looking at hiring now, of going, and which is another reason why it's important to start this as early as possible, so that you can nurture that. Because if you think, okay, I would love to transfer this to somebody who I've trained, who has my oversight, who will continue my values and my goals for the business forward, well, that may be a 15-year project, nurturing that person, developing them, training them, getting them equipped, working with them to develop SOPs so that the business will persist without you, and going, okay, that's a lot. That's just a lot of investment in a personnel at that point to see the business continue.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that I think a lot of business owners struggle with is, we're not thinking about the exit. We're only thinking about today, which makes it harder to say I'm going to transition more of my daily duties and responsibilities to a key employee. And we just see so many people that don't do that or delay that process. And then we're scrambling as we get closer to retirement or exiting the business, and we still don't really have that trusted key person to not only take over the business, but potentially transition it to. And by doing so, it's kind of funny how it works. The more as an owner that you are relieved of those duties and responsibilities, the more attractive the valuation is to the business as well. So when we're looking at it from a buyer's point of view, if it's calling it's your business and I don't necessarily need you to run it, that makes it more valuable to me because we're not at risk to losing revenue or clientele by you not being in the business anymore if I were to buy it from you.
Right. Well, and from a potential buyer, they may go, oh, great, I don't have to come in and immediately learn all of the ropes or do all of these things because it's already running in this way that doesn't need that kind of oversight or that management. So they can get an even larger kickback on their investment just from that aspect as well.
Yep, absolutely. So, even if it is you're grooming a key employee and grooming a key employee and grooming your staff and to making this business run without you is going to really increase the value in so many different ways.
Have you heard of Time to Pet? Dan from NYC Pooch has this to say.
Time to Bet has been a total game changer for us. It helped us streamline many aspects of our operation, from scheduling and communication to billing and customer management. We actually tested other pet sitting softwares in the past, but these other solutions were clunky and riddled with problems. Everything in Time to Pet has been so well thought out. It's intuitive, feature-rich, and it's always improving.
If you're looking for new pet sitting software, give Time to Pet a try. Listeners of our show can save 50% off your first 3 months by visiting timetopet.com/confessional. Earlier, you had mentioned about how sometimes selling your business to a third party can be difficult because it is our baby and we have a hard time agreeing to a dollar amount and then we don't have control over it. I know the flip side of that is sometimes we may think that our business has no value. Right? We don't realize the value that exists in the business, so why even bother moving forward in the business? So other than the gross revenue and looking at how much the business makes, how can we start to realize more of the value that our business has?
Well, that's a good question. So, first, when we're tying business planning all together, business planning is going to take a team, not just a financial planner, a team to actually be created to creating a plan that's going to be successful to actually exit the business. And what I mean by that is it's going to take a CPA. Most likely, it's going to take an attorney. It's also probably going to take a business broker. And where normally we guide our clients to start is your accountant or CPA, because they should have a very good idea of what your profit and loss statement is, your balance sheet, your books, and they'll be able to give you an idea of really what the business is worth just from not only experience but accounting formulas. That's always going to be like my first place to start is, hey, have you had the conversation with your CPA about how much is my business even worth, or how do my metrics look, and hopefully they're just very honest with you. And I think this can then start that conversation of like, what do I need to change, or what do I need to do, or who else I need to implement on my team.
Well, because that's it. Once you get the numbers down, you can go, okay, well, if my goal is to sell this in X number of years, or if I need to sell this in X number of years based off of health or age or other plans that you have going on in your life, okay, now I have metrics to measure against to see if I can get to that point where I can do something with this without me.
Yep, exactly. And I think that it's really important to not only keep very, very accurate books, but having those conversations about your financials consistently and analyzing them to be able to project like you're saying, because that's really going to be one of the starts to this whole process. And if you don't have the answers to those financial questions, really hard to do any exit planning.
Right. How much is it worth? I don't know, but
yeah. Yeah. You know what? Just give me any offer. I'll take any offer.
Well, so you mentioned a CPA, attorney, business broker. Should we be looking for people who have direct experience with exit planning, or can they just have a general idea of businesses in general?
Yeah, I think that any CFP or certified financial planner is probably a good place to start. And why I say that, not just because I am one, but they're going to have a good understanding of what your personal situation is. And we're going to build a retirement projection to see, okay, well, where are you headed and where you're going? We're going to have this conversation. So, if we have a really good picture of your personal finances, then we're able to kind of better assist on building that team for you. So this is probably a good place to start with a CFP. And then I think the second question to the CFP is like, do you have any experience with exit planning? Because it might not be a CFP that actually works in, under that kind of umbrella. So, I think that starting with you personally, making sure your personal finances are in line and making sure that your planner is also experienced in exit planning is kind of that second step.
And I know for me, when I start seeing all these names and these letters pop up, I start saying, "Oh, that's going to cost me some money, and that's going to cost me some money." And here it goes. But I think what's important to remember here of going, this is a really important financial decision that's going to be 20, 30 years possibly in the making. And to have good guidance is going to help make sure that you get the most out of it at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when it is going to add some cost, right? Some expenses to implement not only your team, but to get some of these questions answered. But I think that you're going to have so much more peace of mind and so much more clarity the earlier you start. It's kind of like, we were just before the podcast talking about like maintaining your house, right? Yeah, it's going to cost you some more money, but is it going to make the house more efficient, or is it going to, provide you even more happiness or make the house look better or increase the value? And it's the same with your business. And I think a lot of people can relate to, purchasing a home and maintaining it and keeping it protected and updated. And that's going to be the same with your business, which ultimately could be your primary source of income. So you can make the argument that it's even more important than even, your home is your well-oiled machine business.
And that's a good analogy, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, Josh, because many times when we talk about value, again, just from our mindset, we tend to think of value that objects have, right? Okay, I know when I buy a car, the minute I drive it off the lot, it's worth nothing anymore. But I need to make sure that I keep up with the maintenance and things like that, so that it works for me, but also that I know that's going to maintain its value. Same thing with the home, like we were talking about earlier. And realizing that my business is the exact same thing, even though it might not feel like it, because even if we don't feel like business owners or that we're even doing that big of a thing, because it's either just us or maybe us and another employee, there is inherent value in that because of the revenue that's generating. It's paying our bills, right? That's not an insignificant amount of money or value, and we need to make sure that we do well with that.
Yeah, it's extremely important. And what I think it also indirectly will happen is like, you're going to build this team and this team's going to uncover value. And I think through this process, even through exit planning, even if it's 30 years away, is going to not only answer so many questions and provide clarity, it's going to allow you to like focus on what you do well, which you might not be, do all of the financials. You might not be an exit planning expert or a CPA, and you're spending a lot of time kind of wondering about these questions that are looming. So building this team will, directly and indirectly just create more time and allow you to focus on what's making you a great business, which is you doing what you love. So,
well, and having that team there is going to help you answer some questions that could end up costing you a lot of money in the end. I'm thinking of things like, if you have contracts or licenses or permitting things that you need to, if you're transferring that to somebody, or if you're selling this, or if you are trying to liquidate, seeing, am I going to be breaking any of these by going through this process that have a financial repercussion from that because that exists. Now the value that I thought I had in my business, well, most of that money is going to go in paying off these contracts and these licenses because I broke them.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of like the idea of growing wealth and making sure you're protecting it, right? Like you don't want to lose out on the value due to an unfortunate event or something a threat we didn't solve for. Because a lot of the threats that, are out there is, there's probably some sort of solution to them in the short term and in the long term. So planning this out ahead of time is going to, close those gaps and really, flame out those threats that are looming.
Well, yeah, again, I'm just thinking about the parallels between what we talked about last time and this time, of when we were talking about investing in mutual funds and all these things, going, okay, well, what other threats are out there? And can I cover those with insurance, or can I cover those with other different types of investments? And just making sure that holistically, the picture for me and whatever my goal is safe.
Yep, absolutely. And just to piggyback on one more thought on that is, like, if you're having this, idea that we need to kind of think about our future and exit planning through this process also, what should come out is like, what immediate threats are out there? Like, do I have a buy-sell agreement? Do I have a contingency plan? Is there already a succession plan that's in place? So, I think that, again, starting earlier is going to uncover these things that, potentially we need and we haven't implemented, maybe just because we didn't know or we, haven't went down this road before. And it's going to ultimately protect your business, you and your family.
Yeah, and realizing that, going, okay, maybe I don't have a whole lot of money to set aside for investing for retirement, but I guess, would it be appropriate, Josh, to view our businesses as a retirement aspect to us to help us into retirement?
Of course, yeah. And a lot of times it's your biggest retirement asset. So, making sure that this is protected and growing the way you want it and to having a plan. Yes, to answer your question, it is a huge asset to you and your family and even to create generational wealth. So very, very important to manage it appropriately.
Our friends at Pet Perennials make it easy to send a heartfelt condolence gift directly to someone with a broken heart. They have this awesome direct-to-consumer gift model that takes the pressure off of us and ensures a thoughtful, personalized sympathy gift reaches our client or employee on our behalf. All gift packages include a handwritten card, colorful gift wrap, and shipping fees across the U.S. and Canada. They also offer an array of milestone gifts and greeting cards that can be sent to celebrate birthdays, extend get well wishes, and welcome new and rescued pets. Additionally, there are gift choices in case you need to send a sympathy gift in memory of a special human client or celebrate a pregnancy, engagement, or wedding of a pet lover. If you're interested, register for a free business gift perks account to unlock the all-inclusive discounted package prices. Since you use the service on an as-needed basis, there are no monthly or annual obligations or minimum purchases. Learn more at petperennials.com, check out their business program, or register for that free gift perks account using the link in the show notes. You've mentioned building a team, and we've talked about some of the whys behind this. I guess, Josh, could you maybe just talk about some basics that we need to consider or think through if we're thinking about selling the business?
Yeah, I think going back to what we talked about earlier is getting a valuation done first, like whether that's just through your CPA or doing some Google research of like industry multiples that are applicable to you, and having the conversations. I would imagine, a lot of listeners already have someone preparing their taxes. If you don't, find a good tax person because that's going to be a very good lifeline and a financial planner that can really start to frame and ask the right questions to help you, create the goals, even if you haven't yet. I mean, part of our job as financial planners is to help you uncover the goal, even if you don't know, where that goal is right now, or at least set something, in the sand, or write it in the sand for now. So I think that, that's going to be where I would start, making sure you have good books, making sure we have an idea of valuation, and then, creating the first kind of legs of your team to helping you frame what direction you'd like to go for in the future.
Is there anything different that we should be thinking about if we want to pass this on to a family member or key employee?
Yeah, I think that, again, the same start for me as we had just talked about as far as, valuation and getting everything in line. But I think then it's having more of a conversation with any partners you have or those key employees or those family members to see if there's any interest, because it's, something that you have to love or want to do, right? You can't force anyone to take over a business. In my opinion, that doesn't probably equate to a successful outcome. But then also like other discussions, we've seen it through other families and clients that how is it going to make the other children feel or the other family members feel if the only, one son is involved in the business and another one's not. So, if we are transitioning the business to one sibling and not the other, like, do we compensate the other sibling in some other way to make this fair? And do we have enough resources to do that? So you can see how this conversation can open up so many more questions. And the earlier we have them, the better we can plan that out.
Yeah, because it turns out when you start involving people, things get complicated. and it's not
Exactly.
really just it's not just as easy as just decreeing and declaring something. There is that prep work that we have to do.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that the sooner we have the conversations, the better the outcome's going to be. Because you could, we've seen it too, where we always thought that, my daughter's going to take over the business, and we get to that crossroads and she doesn't want to, right? And the conversation was really never had. So that could lead to, a not successful outcome, which we don't want.
Right. Well, so what are our options out there? I know we've talked about how the plans can change and how, starting earlier, the more options we have down the line. How do we make sure that we adapt well to changes? So, okay, I'm going to give it to my son, but they don't want it. I'm going to give it to my daughter. Okay, they don't want it. Okay, I'm going to try and sell it. Like, how do we make sure that we personally navigate that process of change well?
Yeah, I think that, some of the variables are consistent, whether you are going to, transition it to a family member or partner, or you're selling a third party, which is like, we got to set your personal goal and like your departure date. And like, that's not necessarily going to change, right? We're also going to make sure that like your financial needs are being met through this transition, whether it's third party or transitioning to, family members. And then even if like the successor is a third party, the employees or a sibling, we're still going to need like that valuation, like we talked about, and we're going to need a very good projection of like cash flow going forward. So these are all things, and this is going a little under the hood more of like the critical elements of a successful exit plan. And that's regardless of if it's, transitioning to a sibling or a child or sibling partner, third party, or even, we can get a little bit more complicated and even a transition to like the employees where the company actually buys the shares of the business. So I think though that like those critical elements will really be the same. And if you have them in line and things do change, it's going to be a lot easier to maneuver around that change. What we just don't like to see is that we're just not going to plan and you do have a change and it's going to make the situation even worse if it didn't go the right way.
Yeah, and then always going back to those original goals, just think it's not realizing it's not a bad thing to go, how much money do I need to make from this or get from this at the end as I'm leaving to help meet my personal goals? And whether that's something that's reoccurring, if it's a one-time thing, if this is whatever that looks like, just going, okay, as that changes, maybe how I handle this exit plan will change, or maybe I need to redouble onto that. And always checking in with both of those, that there's that really important connection between our personal finances and the businesses that we run, and that they do influence one another and how we manage them.
Yep, absolutely. And we haven't even seen it to where it's, I want to take a step back in the business. I want to not work as much. And without not knowing like what that valuation is and how much you need personally, like you just mentioned, like we can't really accurately make that decision. But we have seen it too, where the business is actually maybe worth a little bit more than you originally thought, or the cash flow is better than you originally thought as we make some adjustments. And you can go on vacation more. You can take a bigger step back from the business, or, it could really change your lifestyle if you've, haven't had these discussions before.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's an aspect of exit planning that I think is kind of a little tangential to the tangential. I can say that word, tangential to this, of going, well, one aspect of exit planning is as you've brought up a couple times, Josh, going, okay, maybe I just don't work as much. Like that in and of itself is a kind of a partial exit planning, realizing it doesn't have to be one day I'm in there and then the next day I'm completely gone.
Right. And not everyone has that goal of growing or maximizing value. It could just be creating like a better lifestyle, what we call like a lifestyle business or lifestyle practice of, I just wanted to continue to maintain my current lifestyle. I'm not very interested in selling it to a third party or transitioning. I just want to make sure it's a well-run business that's going to provide me with the income I need forever or whatever.
Josh, do you help people kind of navigate maybe some of the personal feelings they have about that of going, well, I'd like a lifestyle business, but maybe I feel guilty for benefiting from a business that I don't operate in on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that you're making, kind of the question that you have. But yes, because you are still indirectly helping people, right? Most of the businesses that we run, and especially even like pet sitting, you're providing a service that is, helping someone else. And, we can help get you to that point of, finding that balance, because you bring up, again, that's a really good point, that you could feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I think that having the clarity financially, setting the right goals, and having these discussions, we're able to get you to feeling comfortable.
And at the end of the day, realizing that it's okay to recognize this business would not have existed without what I've done, what I've invested into this, who I've helped nurtured, who I've helped grow and market and put in all the SOPs and the policies. Like there is inherent value there that is residual, even though you are not conducting the day-to-day work. A lot of that stuff is what is the structure that a lot of other stuff has been built up at that point.
Yeah, it's your foundation that you built and you still have oversight on. And I mean, the alternative is someone who's not running as a good of a business or not providing the level of service that your standard could be, serving that client that you really love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want that. We want to make sure that the people that we work with and care about are taken care of in a great way. And you taking a step back from the business, we can get it to a point where it happens without giving that business to someone else that's not going to manage it the same way you would.
Right, and recognizing that should be important to us, right? if that's what we want, right? Like that's part of that. I guess another question I had, Josh, is what are some common misconceptions about exit planning that you encounter that you think more people need to be educated on?
I think that it's just a bigger topic than a lot of people think. I think that it isn't discussed enough. Business owners and what we see in our field, all the business owners that we work with, it isn't even a discussion until we're getting closer to retirement. And it shouldn't be that way. It should really be, as we're starting a business, we should have an idea of where we want to take it. And what's the ultimate goal, right, of this venture that we're going into. So I think that if I'm going to say anything or something to take from this podcast is, really start to having this conversation and generating some sort of goal and implementing your team, because, you're basically losing out on value and efficiency by waiting. And it just needs to be discussed. And, in America, where you're at, like we talked about, and where we're at too, so many successful small businesses, and we don't want to see that value just diminish or vanish. You've worked very hard for, your clients and to create a successful business. We want to make sure you get what it's worth at some point as you exit. So I think that, really getting started is going to set the right, valuation and set the right expectation. And then it's also going to allow you to, again, create a successful outcome, not only personally, but for your business.
And realizing that no matter what stage of my business, there is value to be had. I know many of our listeners are solopreneurs. They run the business themselves. They do everything themselves. And they may be questioning, going, does my business, if it relies on me, have value? And I think the answer would be yes, because of everything that's involved in that process and the money that it generates to pay, again, to go back to pay those bills, and recognizing that you don't have to be at a certain 100 employees before your business magically has value, right? There's value at each step along the way.
That's a great point. I mean, there's other businesses like yours, and so there is value to be had by you serving your clientele, even if you are just a sole proprietor. I mean, it doesn't matter how small, if it's just you or you have 100 employees, like you said, there's going to be some value that you generate, and let's find that out, right? I think this is the calling card here. Like, let's figure that out, because we don't want that to be just forfeited.
Right. And that first step, as you've said a couple of times now, Josh, is to go go talk to your numbers person, your CPA, and just start making sure that all those are in a row. And if you have those questions, if you want to know, I guess, that's an okay question to ask. Hey, how much is my business worth this year? Not how much did I make, but if I were to sell or do something with it, what's the value of that? And just start getting an idea from that person on your team so you can start realizing what actually is going on.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a great place to start. I always recommend, again, starting with your planner to kind of build that team with you, someone that's kind of the quarterback. But a great first step is making sure, like you said, getting those financials in order and asking the question, how much is this worth today? That's going to really, answer a lot of your questions.
Josh, I really want to appreciate you for coming on the show for us today and walking us through this aspects of business exit planning and some questions that we need to ask and really encouraging us to get started today. But I know, again, that this is a really big topic and there's a lot more involved. So if people do have questions or want to get pointed in the right direction or get pointed to some more resources, how best can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So visiting our website is going to be the best place, which is www.rpawealth.com. That not only has all of our information on what we do and how to contact us, but also allow you to schedule a complimentary consultation with us. It also has links to our podcast, which has great information just on financial planning. I think we even have a couple episodes on business exit planning in our podcast library on our website as well. So yeah, any questions that you have or you'd like to schedule an initial consultation, don't hesitate to visit us on our website.
Perfect. And I will have those in the show notes. So on the website, so people can click right to that and get connected with you, Josh. A lot to consider here and a lot to plan for, but starting early is always the best option. So thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all that with us.
Thank you for having me back, Colin.
My biggest takeaway from my conversation with Josh was the fact that the exit planning starts now with us, with getting in the mindset that we have to understand that at some point, we will no longer be working in our business. Whether by choice or force, we will not be doing this forever. And that is okay, and that we have agency in deciding how that process goes. And the sooner that we start, the better and the easier the planning will actually be. Whether you know exactly how you want to exit your business or maybe not, having those conversations right now will set you up for success. Building that team now will make sure that you are that much further along the process when that time comes. And if you have friends, if you have family members who are involved in your business, this process is going to help make the transition for them all the easier if you are no longer around. It's not just about us passing away. It may be about us passing on or into a new passion. Maybe we fall out of love with the business and with the industry, and we need to do something else. Well, we need to look at our business and decide what happens to this. That's all an exit plan is. Looking at our business and going, what happens to this now? We'd love to know your thoughts on this and steps that you've taken or haven't taken and how you plan on moving forward. You can send that to feedback@petsitterconfessional.com or we're anywhere on social media. We want to thank our sponsors today, Time to Pet and Pet Perennials, for making today's show possible. And we really want to thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be back again soon.